Hello and welcome to the Red Chair podcast series. I'm Manuel Collazo, Vice President of Strategic Marketing and Business Development for Association Headquarters. For more than 45 years, AH has provided association leaders, volunteers, and staff with the most relevant and compelling industry news and information. Lots of great discussion. I'm going to bring us back a little bit. Jean, you mentioned very early in our discussion today this idea of a member journey. And I do think that, again, for lots of reasons, whether it's the macro environment and things like COVID all of a sudden land in our lap, and how do we adjust and pivot to technology that's changing all the time. And it's tempting to continue to diversify and try new things, right? And not that there's any fault in that, particularly if you have a limitless budget, which I'm not sure any of us do. So I want to talk a little bit about what we think in marketing is sort of step one, right? Which is member fulfillment, member onboarding, right? That's, for me, it is still absolutely our primary opportunity to kind of get it right and to create an initial connection that will then build on throughout that member's journey. So whether it's a personalized welcome letter or it's an invitation to join social media or an outline of programming and curriculum, whatever pieces you have to the member fulfillment packet for new association members, talk to me about how you value that in your association and what is sort of tried and true. What, if we're going to do nothing else this year, we're going to make sure we do these two or three things.
So I'll even go back further to a comment that you made, Jody, about service. And so we have a member packet that, we used to send it, we still send it. It just had, our latest annual report, flyers about our mentoring program, how to use our e-community discussion board, flyer about the annual meeting, all the tricks and trades we would have at an exhibit booth we had in that folder. But we stepped back for a second and said, well, they probably know some of that already because they probably browsed our website and saw all of that. And yes, it's wrapped in a nice folder, branded folder, and there's a letter with it. But what are we actually giving back after getting their initial dues payment? So what we started doing was offering content to them to say your first 4 webinars are on us. We invite you to, pick from this bundle of webinars our most highly downloaded, viewed webinars or virtual offering. And as an appreciation for that, we're giving those to you. And the feedback, it seems simple, but the feedback was overwhelming. It's like, well, I was going to purchase anyway. Well, I was already all in to your organization because I found, again, my tribe. But the fact that you're giving back immediately upon me joining your organization speaks volumes. The other thing we have done, and it is, I guess I would call it service, is, within a few months, 3 to 6 months, there's an invitation to volunteer as well. And again, we on an average year attract about 500 new members, and so that's a lot of effort. It's a volunteer effort, staff supported, of course, but that's a lot of outreach and a lot of direct connection that goes a long way, and if it only nets 50 or so volunteers, the ones that aren't stepping up, the timing isn't right, but I appreciate the outreach, as well. So again, it's service, it's a respect, especially when it's coming from someone that has a long-standing history in this field that's reaching out to say, hey, I would love to tell you my story. And, you were like me 10, 20 years ago, and here's how you can navigate your way through this huge organization where you may feel like you don't have a place.
So similarly, that outreach from that, the long-standing member, the respected person, the person they see maybe at the conference that they're afraid to approach. There's a lot of that when you're new in your career. we have a very prescribed process. It involves that, but along the way, we send them. It's funny, but it's they get this in the mail. They're excited. It's literally like a toolbox, a literal toolbox, metal. We're right along the brand of NADCA, but we provide. Our marketing team has created, and it's really been a valuable tool. Business tools for the member. Here are some social posts. Here's how you use them. Literally, how do you 1, 2, 3 post this to your social account? How do you build a social media campaign for your company? What are the marketing tools that are available? So we provide literal, here in your hands, here's what you can do, and here's where you can download the digital version of this. This is how you sell it to your company. And then at each touch point, 30 days, 60 days, there's another outreach. And it's, initially when you join, you'll get a discount on your certification because certification is a requirement of membership, which is the golden handcuff that we might want to talk about when we talk about retention. It's a nice to have.
It's interesting that I laughed a little about the toolbox, but it made me remember one of the things in our member kit that we hand out is a tape measure. It's a branded tape measure, and any occupational and physical therapists or even a surgeon, those are hard to come by because they often walk away like pins in an office, and so a tape measure is an important tool. For an occupational physical therapist, because you're measuring the size of an edema or a scar, and so they now have their own. This is mine, and it's branded with my organization, and it's the first thing to go from our booth. But we hand those out, and we have members that will call and say, "I just got this. Can I have some more?" Because I have some members. Well, let's get those members to join as well, but we will still send those out to you. Just try to get a membership from them as well.
Yeah, those things they can touch and feel. It's amazing, the excitement and the being. It creates a sense of being a part of. Like we sell shirt patches, right? So a technician can put a patch on their shirt when they go into a home. They're representing the association. It's it's a professional presentation. Decals for your vehicles, right? For their trucks. I'm a member of NADCA. Like, it's a recognized brand, and those things, they go a long way.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, an association that I might be a part of that might send me something similar, and
Think about that. I'm gonna recap because I think this is important for all of our listeners and viewers to sort of always be anchored in this idea of, and what I heard you say was personalized, relevant, and actionable, right? So those are really key adjectives, I think, to describe particularly initially what we're doing with our new members to create a level of engagement that then we can build on. Did you remember what you were gonna?
No.
Okay. So then my follow-up question is this, because from my perspective in marketing, if we're not failing, we're not doing enough, quite frankly, right? And so I'm curious if you have a campaign or an idea that you're willing to share with folks in the spirit of transparency, a campaign or an idea that either was yours or you supported from that overzealous board member perhaps, that just was a failure. It didn't hit the mark. Maybe we probably wasted some time and resources. But again, in the spirit of it, if we're not trying new things, then we're not moving forward. Jody, you seem like you have.
I have a great one, and when I was all in, when I say I was all in, I mean I was all in. So it was our marketing team again back in 2016. We were really churning out some new exciting content in the Breathing Clean campaign, and it was a new member acquisition marketing campaign, and it was March Madness themed. Now, being a basketball player, I was on board with it. I think I was it was roses and sunshine for me because it tied in something that's so familiar to me, which is sports. And so it was a competition among the members, like member get a member, but essentially, who's going to win the bracket and who's going to get the most members. And do you want to know how many members we got? 1. Nobody cared. It was not, that message resonated with me so much. I'm like, let's go get members, but it did not resonate with my audience. And it was beautifully graphically designed. The messaging was sound, but it fell flat. you know, and so we had to regroup and think about, is my association, are my members even the right audience to engage in a member, get a member? They're their competitors, right?
Right.
And so while I want you to come and put on your NADCA hat, and I want you to think about bettering the industry, and hey, if the guy down the street is not underbidding, then, you know, if he's bidding $200 in a job that should be 600, he's gonna get the business. Don't I want him to be, you know, competitive and like, let's both make money, right? So like educating the member to say like, hey, yeah, they're your competitor, but you're also in this together in this industry. And so finding a different way to grow membership and have the support and the, you know, that the competitive business nature of it not get in the way of that is, you know, the takeaway that we got from that exercise.
Gene,
I would say for us, a hard lesson that we learned is you can't always go to the membership to ask them to fund something, to fund the latest and greatest. So 5 years ago, maybe more, we actually upped our advocacy game, and we bought into a professional legislative action center, like most organizations have. You go on our legislative action center, or LAC, and it allows you to communicate with your state or your federal legislator on an issue. We have all the issues loaded, and we have sample letters, social media posts on there as well. All you do is put your zip code in, and it tells you who your legislators are, state and federal. The letters are preloaded, you can customize them, you send them out, that's great. So we had the great idea that, well, because it costs money, that let's, you know, see if we can go to the membership to help them fund it, to say, you know, we're amplifying your voice. Let your voice be heard, and if you're so inclined, to make a donation to our Vision Fund, because this will help support that. And great messaging, graphics, all kinds of social media posts and e-blasts went out, and the resounding was a resounding thud, actually, we heard back. But what the members are saying, so if advocacy is a part of our mission, we were expecting this anyway. Everyone else is doing this. No one else is asking for money. So thank you, but no thank you. We're going to continue using this, but we expect our dollars to support this anyway from dues, and not you doing a fundraising campaign around a core part of the mission, you know, so.
Yeah. But what does it say about the brand of ASHT that you could get that kind of feedback from members and still maintain their loyalty and right, you know, that I think that's one of the key pieces in successful association management, is being able to have that kind of transparency with your board and your membership to be able to try those things and get that kind of feedback, right? So, okay, so I'm going to take us back a little bit again to the concept of a journey map. As you know, as a marketing guy and sort of marketing 101 talks about, not every member is the same, not every member journey is the same, right? And but I think until recently, and in some industries and associations, it's still a struggle, is to really get our association partners to embrace that. I think this idea of understanding the evolution of a member, and Jean, I think you articulate it beautifully when you talk about how the membership of ASHT changes and how dynamic it is over the course of their career, and their needs change and things like that. And so whether we're looking at the audience from the basic demographic profile of age and gender, or years in the industry, or some specialty area, or some other sophistication, how has that been received, I guess, is my question, when you think about diversifying your acquisition and retention efforts? And I ask that question because personal experience with associations is that it's really scary, and they automatically see dollar signs, right? The assumption is we're asking for more, right? We have to do more. I don't know that that's always the case, but sometimes perhaps. So talk to me about, at a baseline, how you look at segmentation in your retention and acquisition efforts, and maybe how that's changed, whether it's new categories you're looking at today that even 3 years ago you weren't.
I would say it goes back again, needing that specialist at the table, because when you initially have the conversation with a board member, you're talking about acquisition, they will quickly tell you, well, you know, you probably need to wait for a therapist until they're 5 years in before they're really going to start engaging and buying this or that. And then once they're settled, you know, they've advanced in their career, they're earning more money, they have more opportunities to engage either at an in-person conference or they're at that point getting ready for certification. Let's just kind of let them be silent those first few years because they're a sponge at that point, and we probably shouldn't be bombarding them. And so I can understand that from a personal, practical, personal level. That's how it worked for you. But let's kind of talk about what they need, and we should probably be informed by data and not just a few opinions at the table. Let's talk to the membership about what do you need. Okay, you're 0 to 5 years, you're 6 to 15 years. What is it you need from us? Is it just information? Will the journal suffice your needs because you're just trying to study all you can because you're getting ready for certification? Will the webinars meet your need and you're not ready yet for in-person because you don't have the standing yet in your clinic or in your hospital or your university if you're a researcher to get funding to go to conference? So if that's not where you are, what can we provide to you that's different than what's already there? And that was a journey to get to that conversation because the thinking was, that's where they are. We have to respect where they are. Let's wait until they're further in their career. But it took our Marcom experts to come to the table to say, well, what are you basing that on? Show me the data. Here's what I can tell you how other folks engage within your industry as well. And content is king across all continuums of any profession. So how can you monetize? How can you really leverage the content that you have? And so, I guess it's repetitive again, just having that conversation because they're ready with their own formulas about what worked for them, but taking the blinders off really helps to further that conversation.
So let me ask quick about data because it's been a theme throughout what we've talked about, and again, I love when we talk about data-driven solutions as opposed to anecdotal. How often do you, or would you recommend, without putting you in the hot seat, that we survey our members? That we actually, again, as a marketing person, I think going to the source is typically your best strategy for getting real-time, relevant information to feed back into the building of your acquisition and retention strategies. But on what cycle do you, whether it's informal a survey at an annual meeting or whether it's a formal readership study of a publication, how often do you engage your members in getting data that then is used to tweak the
That's a really good question, and it might be easier for us as a healthcare related organization. On a grand scale, every other year is the big membership survey. But we're also an accredited organization. We provide continuing education for folks to renew their licensure, to meet their licensure or recertification requirements. So as a part of any educational opportunity we do, there are a set of questions that we have to ask to make sure that we've met the learning objectives and it meets the need of our accreditors. But we also use it as an opportunity to further our needs assessment as well. So the first 5 questions are technical, and then the remaining 3 to 5 are, okay, where are you in your career path? When are you looking to do certification? What more do you need from our organization, and what are you not seeing? And the fact that these individuals are used to doing these surveys anyway, and they understand why a survey has to come at the end of every single educational opportunity, they're primed already. So we try not to take advantage and have too many questions after that. But 3 to 5 additional questions gives us touch points throughout the year that we can aggregate to bring to our annual planning session to say this is what we've heard throughout the year from our in-person courses to our virtual courses to our short courses, to our 3-day courses. Here's what we're hearing.
Right. No, I love that. I think so many organizations don't leverage. If you're going to be in front of an audience, right, adding some additional questions, absolutely makes sense. Jody, how does that work for NADCO?
So traditionally, you know, our survey response rate is very low in the traditional sense of, you know, a member survey. And so we're reluctant to generally do those, maybe 3 to 5 years. You know, I've been with them 11 years, we've probably done 3. And the content we've gotten back has not necessarily been super meaningful, because the people who tend to respond in my association are the people that have, you know, maybe it's a complaint, and that's valid. We want to hear the complaints, right? Because we want areas for improvement. But we don't always get the constructive, the thing, you know, that we're looking for. And so a lot of times, like, the staff will drive that with the subject matter experts. The board is very engaged, and their ability to kind of scan the association, the industry, for what the next trend is, or what are the challenges we're seeing. And I'm going to be honest, like, a lot of the information we get comes from social media, like Air Duct Cleaning Forum, like on Facebook. They are engaging at such a high level, and asking questions, and our subject matter experts are in there answering them, right? And, you know, occasionally a little drop about the association, like, are you going to come to our fall tech, right? And so we, along the way of we do have like a career map. You know, you can become a ventilation maintenance technician, which I am proud to say that I am. It's a series of modules that you take online, and then you come to our fall technical conference, which has traditionally been for technicians, right? Just getting started in the field, 5 to 7 years in, maybe not 7, but early career adopters. And you get to touch and feel and cut access openings and do the actual work of air duct cleaning. And what we've learned over the years is that event has grown so much. We used to call it the redheaded stepchild, because, you know, we didn't really like to fund it so much, and you know, there was a little resistance in the boardroom to how much value to put on that, because we didn't want to. The thinking at the time was don't lose attendees from the annual meeting, right? We're taking from our own, but we've managed to create this entirely different experience, and the feedback that we get on site, you know, real time, we have all of our volunteers, you know, like in the field, and they're talking to these attendees, and the feedback has really just been that this is more of a, you know, I feel safe here, like I'm new in the industry, and you've created a space where I can come and learn without feeling less than, right? Because I'm not here maybe with my owner, and I'm here to like be a little bit vulnerable and see what it is that I don't know. Whereas the annual conference is, you know, more high level, and so the career mapping, you know, is tied to the credential, and then the certification and the advanced certification, but it's also tied to the level of education we provide at the conference. And what we're learning through these, you know, informal surveys and reading social media and really trying to understand what's happening in the industry is that our fall tech conference is actually, there's a desire for more advanced learning, because those that started their career coming to that conference, they still want to come, right? But we need to give them something. They need to have some nugget of education. So this year, for the first time, we added an advanced track, and our registration it's a record. You know, we're 1 week out, and it's the highest it's ever been. And it's just, I think, being nimble and reacting to what the market's telling you and paying attention to what they're saying. And, you know, maybe not always with a formalized survey.
Yep. I would agree.
Lots of good discussion on member retention. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about acquisition, right? While existing members and member retention is kind of the lifeblood, new members, of course, are a source of revenue and new ideas, and force us, I think, to be creative. So let's talk a little bit about sort of acquisition 101, right? What are you doing in your associations to attract new members? What's working, what's not? Jody?
So again, back to the whole create market demand, right? So we have created we're playing a very long game. We employed a full-time standard and specification marketing manager, and her sole job is to build awareness and demand for our certification in the industry. So, you know, probably more related to commercial air duct cleaning than not, but we have a bid specification. You know, architects, engineers, facility managers, they're putting out a bid, right? And contractors are deciding whether or not they can bid on the work, creating market demand, right? So we created a specification in partnership with CSI, the Construction Specification Institute. and they're very well known in the construction industry. And basically, ease of use, like you take this document and it's plug and play. And it specifies everything about duct cleaning to ACR, the NADCA standard, to the best level of cleanliness that you can expect on a job. But it also specifies that an ASCS, which is our marquee certification, be responsible for the work. So, they're in charge of managing the team on site. It just adds a level of expectation for the industry. If a NADCA member or an air duct cleaner, not even a NADCA member, wants to bid on this, maybe it's a $4 million job cleaning, a university. Well, in that bid specification, it's going to say that you have to be ASCS certified. So, talk about acquisition strategy, right? If you want to bid on that job and you want that business, you're going to have to, right? And certification and membership really go hand in hand with my organization. So, again, thinking bigger outside of, it's really hard to go out and do a market research study. It's very expensive, it's time consuming, and there's high turnover. Like, you're going to lose 10% of your membership every year, right? You have to expect that budget for that loss. How are you going to recoup that and build upon it, right? That's the challenge I think we face as association professionals is, keeping that number climbing when there's turnover, especially in a low barrier to entry industry like mine. And I'm going to hand it over to Jim.
What are we doing at ASHT?
I would say
attract members?
similar to NACA, it's a long-term approach, and it's on creating market demand. And so over the past 5 years, we have released new editions of our popular publications. That's not an easy task. It's human and financial resources to do that. We've also, at our marketing department's council, upped our marketing game, and we are now in the digital marketing realm from a social media standpoint. We're doing gated content. We're doing lead generating campaigns on social media. And it's interesting for members to get excited about that, and board members to get excited about that, because we introduced pixels, and like I saw an ad for ASHT when I was shopping on Nordstrom. It's annoying when you see other ads you're not engaged in, but when you see an ad that you are engaged with, it's validating, and we hear that from members as well. They're annoyed when they see other unrelated things, but there's a sense of pride when they see an ASHT ad following you across, because they know that other people are now seeing that and are probably more inclined to click on those. And so we do have high click-through rates, and that probably is low-hanging. It's probably one of the more simple things you can do as an association, but for us, it meant the world, and it seemed like it was a big spend, and it probably wasn't compared to other things in the toolbox, but it's yielded so many more new members for us. The other thing, again, probably low-hanging, is being present at industry meetings. And we go to these events, we exhibit, we invest in lead generating technology there as well. We're scanning badges, we're putting in notes in there as well, and we're segmenting even when we're on the floor. So when I go back to the office and have the conversation with the staff, when you call this person, you're going to talk about mentoring. When you go to this person, you're going to talk about our hand therapy review course, because they're getting ready for certification in a year or so, and this course is just right for them. And so that has helped, as well. We haven't embarked on buying lists. I don't know the value there yet, and it hasn't even been recommended by our marketing team to buy the list. It's put out something that they're going to want to purchase or want to have access to. They're going to give you information, and then we can put them into a workflow campaign. And I'd rather put that effort in than spending a lot of money on a glossy brochure or a postcard that gets mailed and nobody responds to it. I'd rather engage with you in content that I know you want and that you need, and hopefully at the end of that campaign, you're so inclined to go to a conference or to do membership.
No, I think that's great, and I think in reference to the idea of buying lists, I think that it's very case specific and very association specific. It can be extremely effective when you have a very targeted audience and you have a very specific point to make, right? I think the use of lists in marketing campaigns historically are meant when we're doing larger, more mass things. And I think because fewer people are, digitally yes, but fewer people are doing lists for anything other than engaging in email and things like this, I think it's gotten fairly expensive and almost cost prohibitive. But we're going to wrap up. But I have one last question. Two buzzwords I think that you mentioned, and one was workflow, and the other was personalization, right? And my question is, because those are two elements that are really, really important, I think, in the way we communicate from the get-go, right? And we are gathering data a lot on the retention side because we have more of an opportunity, we have some history, so you're connecting data points to help tell a story. My question for both of you is, how do you use that member data to inform your acquisition strategy?
That's a really good question, actually.
Pretty sure I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, can we just wrap it up right there? Yeah.
I want to make sure.
We're not playing in that. I'm not playing in that space.
Okay.
I want to make sure I'm understanding the question too.
So, okay, so let me expand a little bit.
Demographic.
Right. So it could be whatever data you're gathering, right? And I know that most associations, so I apologize for putting you on the spot here. I'm not talking about necessarily the user experience, like that level of sophistication, but I think that we're more likely to gather retention data, quite frankly, or it tends to be more sophisticated because we've had longer to do it, quite frankly. And as I said, we gather the same data point over time. We get to see sort of, there's some behavioral indication, even if we're not measuring behavioral data. And so one of the things that, again, as a marketing professional in the association world that I've noticed is, even when we're gathering the data, we may be using it to repeat retention campaigns, right? We might use it to narrow the list, or we might use it to tweak the copy based on a response rate. But what we learn about our existing customers should inform how we acquire new ones, right, members. So I'm curious if anything comes to mind where there might have been a connection point.
Yeah, so I think that you've hit what is a tremendous opportunity, probably for several of our association clients, and that could be one. You know, first of all, we don't gather enough of that data, and part of that is the challenge of getting them to. We don't want to overcomplicate the application process or the renewal process, right? And so what's the threshold for that member, that audience, to engage and provide information? My members aren't going to provide, annual sales. What's their gross revenue? They're not going to provide that, right? They hold it very closely. They're privately owned companies or entrepreneurs, territorial around that. But they'll tell me, are they doing 50% of their work in the commercial sector versus residential? And so we're collecting information like that. And one area where I can specifically say we are using that data is in sales. Our initial relations team is using that for their target exhibitors, right? People that want to exhibit and sponsor and have a service. Where's the biggest demand going to be? What's the product that's going to meet that need? So that would be one example.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because it's getting me to think about where we may actually have a gap in that data collection, because we've been primarily using it for retention. But when I look through our workflow campaign and we're giving them access to research or journal articles or webinar here or there, and at the end the reward is a membership, the follow-up question that I think would help inform the acquisition: how did you use that content? Why was it important? And I think that might be something we probably need to add to that, because we've never thought about it on the other side. Because they purchase a membership, they're in now, but there was something. It wasn't just the free content. They found a practical use for that article, maybe they've been struggling, or in their area, they work in an urban area and they work with farmers, and that article about amputation meant a lot to them because that's their patient base. And so needing to examine that. So I appreciate that question because it's sparking ideas in my head about ways
Yeah,
to...
it's not unique to associations, quite frankly. I think that regardless of how large or small or diverse the industry you're in, I think data, it just continues to be a challenge, right? There's so many ways to look at it. And the example that you gave, I mean, one of the things that came to mind, and I'd love to talk more about this offline, is it doesn't necessarily have to increase the level of complexity in what you're doing. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of non-marketing people shy away from it, right? The more we know, the more we're going to have to do with it, right? For me, it would even be tweaking the messaging to have a greater impact that could increase your response rate and therefore your number of new members, right? So just as an example of how you can use that retention data to just better inform how you're approaching your acquisition.
So we've also, the other buzzword of the day has been data, of course, and it's been with us now for a long time, maybe a decade, right? And to your point, what you just said really hit it home for me, because in my mind I'm thinking, what is unique to associations is resource allocation and lack thereof, right? Because we only have so much dollars, member dues or otherwise, to support these initiatives. But so a lot of times we will collect data and then there's no resource allocation behind what to do with it, right? And so even that little suggestion of tweaking the messaging is, I think, a powerful one that, doesn't require resource allocation, just a different perspective, that you're bringing to the table to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that so often the recommendation that we're giving associations that we're talking to about their marketing plans is, let's not go into this discussion assuming that we have to do the same amount of things, right? Yeah. So if we just start there, then resource allocation, there's automatically less pressure. We're breathing a little bit, right? Because if we did 175 things last year that we called marketing, right? And we assume we have to do the same things and the budget isn't going to grow more than maybe cost of living or something, well, then we have no time to gather data, to use it, to inform the process or anything. But if we just start with an agreement that if we can do less more effectively, all of a sudden the conversation changes a little bit. So I'm super grateful and I appreciate both of your time. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Jean, for joining us today. And thank you, our viewers, for watching the first in our 2022 series of the Red Chair podcast. Our next episode will air within the next couple weeks and it'll be about building strategic marketing plans. Thanks again. Have a great day.